Hello, everyone. Welcome to season 2 of For the Love of Tinsel, your safe and cozy place to lean into your love of romantic Christmas movies, holiday movies, actually. I am Aisha. Hi.
And I'm Angela.
It's December. It's on. So
Hmm.
let's get talking. So, Angela, I wanted to bring up something now that we've been watching so many of these movies, and I've been watching some of the old ones, and of course, you've got the new ones coming that are out right now. And I don't think anyone is going to argue that there isn't a formula to holiday movies. There's
Yes.
clearly there's supposed to be a formula. This is a place,
Mhm.
if you're going to watch these things, you have to be prepared for and excited about the not the what's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. You want to just see how
Mhm.
it's going to happen.
Right.
But after a while, you know, one of the things that I've been recently thinking about after watching so many is, what's the difference or the downside of, keeping the formula is important, but,
Mhm.
is there a downside by just playing it too safe? And I was
Yeah.
wondering, what's your opinion? You've made one of these movies. Like, what do you think about when in writing or directing these movies?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's consistent, obviously, with these romantic films is, two people are going to meet and they're going to fall in love, right? Everybody knows
Mhm.
it. There's no like spoiler alert, they don't fall in love at the end.
Right. Right.
So you're already walking in with that whole trajectory being known. So what you're
Mhm.
trying to do is give people as many surprises as they can have along the way, or
Right.
just the joy of watching them fall in love is so infectious and fun that it doesn't really matter that you already kind of know what's going to happen. um but I do feel like there is a formula that at a certain, it's like if you watch too many of them, it starts to feel a little tired. And
Yeah.
like I'm one of the things I've been excited about, for example, is that people are doing different things for a living, for example, right? Because you have the like there was that one that this woman, really wanted to go work for NASA. And like there's at least people are getting like
Right.
different occupations. and
Right.
and I think the trope of the woman who has like a really sad personal life and then comes to the small town and everything has meaning. I mean, that's a trope that is going to continue, but I do feel like they're starting to try to finesse that trope a little bit so that it isn't so much like a woman is being
Right.
punished for actually like having a job, because that's how it
Right.
was in the
Or
beginning,
loving her job, right? Like that you
Mhm,
can't
mhm,
are you really happy? Are you really
mhm.
really happy though?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things that in New Orleans Noel, which is a tricky thing, is that our lead Keisha, she has that trope, but actually, her love interest also has that trope, and he's pushed even harder by family about not really appreciating family and prioritizing that. And that's something that was important to me, is to have men be
Right.
answerable for that too, because it's always like
Right.
women are supposed to want to be at home basically so they can take care of the home, but men don't have to be answerable. It's like, no,
Right.
people should want to have like balance in their lives, right?
Right. Men get to
um
stay where they are, and the woman must change in order to find
mhm.
happiness.
Yeah,
Yes.
drop her job, don't
All of
live in
it.
that big city. Go,
What? You could do
um
it in a town of 5. That's not a problem.
exactly. And like
Or
you
not at
can't do it
all.
in a town of five. Yeah, exactly.
Or you'll find
So
complete happiness doing what grandma did, and that's
mhm.
okay, right? And you're like,
Mhm.
"Is it?" Okay,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, I think, that's one thing, is like that's why it's so important to have more channels making the movies, because they're going to have their own mandates and their own interests. Like even, when we talked
Mhm.
about Xmas, last episode, that is a network that's able to get more raunchy, and they're able to
They
make
can have
something
sex.
sex,
Implied
and
sex.
implied sex. Well, you saw little. You saw more
I
than you
mean,
ever
I
see.
absolutely.
I saw
Absolutely.
back. I saw back. I mean, I
There was
like that's
skin. Not a
there
lot of
was
it, but there was
skin.
some. Yep.
Yeah. you know so I think that's why it's so important to have different channels doing it, and also obviously diversity, and telling diverse stories
Yep.
um make them feel different too. So even if you have like a movie that is the exact same story, but you incorporate like a different kind of family from a different place, it has a different energy to it too, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, it is a challenge though. I imagined also just with pitching, when you're pitching these stories, it's always a thing of the network wants something that feels the same but different, but not too different.
Right.
And that's a
But
very
not to this
particular
but not to the
dance.
same either, right? That's
Mhm.
the thing. They're like,
Mhm.
then what makes it special? And you're like,
Yeah,
"But you just gave
yeah.
me these 48,000 guidelines of what it has to be, but you want
Mhm.
unique and special." Okay, understood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
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 I definitely that's on my mind right now just because watching these movies right now, I'm really looking for, regardless of the network, what did you
Mhm.
do to make it keep it a Christmas movie, but,
Right.
you know, not play it too safe that it's I've seen this movie, haven't I, 15 minutes in. Um, just
Yeah.
something. So,
I'd
that we'll
also,
probably talk.
yeah, we'll talk more about this. One
Yeah,
other thing I just want to say about that point is, this is partially why it's big that these larger networks like an Amazon or Netflix have gotten into the game and have gotten bigger stars into the movies and have incorporated slightly bigger budgets, in that that does give a little more leeway to, so for example,
that
like for
makes sense.
supernatural pieces of it, or like magical realistic pieces of a holiday movie, they can happen a little more realistically, they can look a little better, they can, there's more room to
Right.
grow with those kind of bigger, bigger budgets, and different kinds of stars and that type of thing. So it's a step in the right direction for sure. But yeah, no, I feel you, I feel you.
Agreed, agreed.
um
I think I'm
yeah.
gonna next time that, I'm not gonna do it today, but I think
Hmm.
maybe in the future I'm gonna be looking for those elements that are a little bit different. And then
Hmm.
if I see something, I'm gonna mention it. I'm gonna bring it
Hmm.
up just because I think it's worth hearing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we can also, talk about it in our kind of upcoming review. We're obviously going to do our review, but coming up, we just recorded this incredible behind the curtain with Emily Moss Wilson. That was really, really great and inspiring. I was sort of having one of
It
those
really
like,
was.
ho hum, this industry, what are we doing? And talking to her just, made me feel excited and invigorated. And Emily's directed a ton of Christmas movies. Some highlights are Christmas in Mississippi, Christmas in Tune, starring Reba McEntire, and her newest, which is Rescuing Christmas. So, we're going to get to that interview a little bit later. But before that, let's talk about a movie.
Let's do it. So, just we're going to talk about, I think, Christmas with a Kiss, correct? Did you see
Hmm.
that?
Hmm.
All right.
I did. What if I said
Okay.
no?
I'd be
What if
like,
I said no?
brilliant, brilliant. So let me just tell you what it's about, and then you could tell me what you think you would think of a movie that's about that, and we would
Yeah,
just go
no,
from
no,
there,
no.
right? We would just roll with it.
I did it. I
I
did my
okay,
homework. I saw Christmas
cool,
with the
cool, cool,
Kiss.
cool, cool, cool. All right, so let me give you a little bit of background. Christmas with a Kiss is on Hallmark, and it's starring Michelle Morgan, Rami Rowe, and Jamie Calica. It's directed by Roger Robb, and the writers are Maggie Bush and Lanre Adewu. I hope I said his name right because he deserves to have his name said correctly. So, the plot of the movie is that a woman, Morgan, returns home to help with her family's Christmas carnival and romantic nights with a photojournalist and an old high school boyfriend. And the
Mm,
tagline for the movie is there can only be one Mr. Right. Dun dun
mm,
dun.
da, 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 mhm,
Dun dun dun.
mhm,
So, Angela, what'd
mhm.
you think
Um,
overall?
ok okay, so, she's on Young and the Restless. I had to do a little Googling
Is
because,
she?
when you see Black people on, like, a Hallmark or a Lifetime, you're like, somebody has some kind of cachet. So where is their fan base? So I googled her. She's
Okay,
on Young and the
okay,
Restless.
gotcha. She's
One of her love
gorgeous.
interests. She's gorgeous. She's gorgeous. One of her love
She's
interests
gorgeous.
was in Merry Little Christmas, the Kelly Rowland series. The
Yes,
fireman guy. Because I kept being like, this
yes.
guy's familiar.
I remember him. He was
Yeah.
actually funny in that one. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So like to Aisha's point about, what we sort of started talking about in the beginning, there's like nothing wrong with this film, her family is adorable.
Wonderful.
And I actually am really into Christmas movies with Black families in small towns because I think that people associate Blackness with urbanness. Um,
Mhm.
and so sometimes we don't get like the quaint Christmas because we're like tied to like the gritty urban city, you know? So I actually loved that about the movie, that it was like they're just in Nowheresville and they are like
Yep.
the family that like keeps the Christmas traditions. Um, and so I was like charmed by all of that. Um, I'm not sure about the chemistry in this movie with so there's two guys, right? That she's kind of there's a love triangle ish. One is like her high school sweetheart who like dumped her, which is that's a little unclear about the dumping situation. And like I was like, were they supposed to go out on a date and he dumped her, or did they date and he dumped her? Aisha, do you have clarity on that? Just before I go on,
Well,
were
I
they
got the
together
impression
or
that they were no, that they were together. Remember they had the
okay?
ornament with their 2 names on it
Oh, right.
together,
Okay.
and,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
they were
Hmm.
together.
They were together.
Yeah.
And so her high school boyfriend kind of dumped her, and everyone's kind of like, and she comes back and sees him, um, and wants to rekindle it. Oh, I should say, sorry, this is all over the place. I should say that she begins the movie being dumped by this guy she's gone on a few dates with. And I actually that scene is kind of funny where
It is funny.
she's on a
It is
date with
funny.
this guy, and he is like, "Thank you, I had such a great time with you, and that great time made me see that I want to get back together with my wife." And she was like, "What? Your wife? Huh?"
Well, my favorite part is that he ended it with "Merry Christmas."
Exactly.
He was like
That was great. That was great.
I was like, "You know what? Whenever you're like, no, you say something. No, you say something. Let the other person go first, right? Like, let them say what they're
Exactly.
going to say so you don't
Hmm.
embarrass yourself. If they're willing to go
Exactly.
first and you both
Yeah.
have something to say, let them go first." That was the
Hmm.
lesson in the first 10 minutes of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
movie.
That was funny. So she's kind of like looking for love. And I guess she made this wish that like, she wants to find love by 35. By the way, that age has bumped up. That she needs to find love by a certain age. So 35, I was like, oh, that's bumped up. I remember when it was 30. But
Yep.
so and then it's kind of the triangle between these two guys.
It was a
I
strange
don't know
wish for a
about
9-year-old, by the way. I'm just saying,
yeah.
what 9-year-old
Yeah.
says
I
35?
know. Because when you're
You might as well
9,
have said
you
85 when you're 9. What?
exactly. When you're 9, you think that like 25 is old. So
Yeah, exactly,
I
exactly. I
know.
was like, "What 9-year-old is gonna say 35?" But okay.
Yeah. I'm torn on this movie because there's nothing wrong with it,
Right.
but it's kind of meh,
Yeah.
to be totally honest. Like, it's like
I
there's nothing
know.
wrong with this movie, and it's a really
No.
good movie to like turn on with your family and while you're doing a
Yes.
lot of other things,
Sure.
but it's
Sure.
just like missing I think it's missing heat in the chemistry. You kind of would have needed some heat to really like because it's really just like her hanging out with these two dudes, and there's not even really it's also missing Christmas shenanigans from her, really. And I do like a Christmas shenanigan.
You do. You like a it's so funny. I feel like the shenanigans
Hmm.
was in the beginning with that
Hmm.
weird, and then that was it for the rest of
Hmm.
the movie.
Mhm,
And yeah, I agree with you.
mhm,
I agree with you 100%. There were so many things that were right with it. First of all, it's a
mhm,
beautiful movie. It's very
mhm,
pretty.
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
I think as a leading lady, she's
Mhm.
not a bad actress in any way, shape, or form. She's
No.
gorgeous. She's
Mhm,
absolutely gorgeous.
mhm,
And she's expressive. Like sometimes
mhm,
they're dead in the eyes and you're like, I need more or something. But
mhm.
she's fine. Her
Yeah, yeah.
sister is
Mhm,
really sweet. I love the family dynamic. I love the family back history. You're right. We don't see that too often with
mhm,
Black families leading the traditions for
mhm,
a town. When does that happen?
mhm. Yeah,
Right? So
exactly. Mhm,
all of that I really loved. Of course, they checked the boxes. They had the military person making
mhm,
it
mhm.
home, and I thought that was I there's a huge demographic that really appreciates that, especially at this time of the year. And it's always such a great way to say thank you for your service, to include
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
in the movies. You did that in yours as well, which I thought was
Yes,
just
exactly. Mhm.
it's very heartwarming. And I love those elements. They had the red and the green and the decorating, and all of that stuff was there.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
But
you know,
yeah.
back to something we said, it played it so safe
Mhm,
that it
mhm,
was it was a non-event, and
mhm.
that was the issue. Um
Mm,
that was the issue. Also, if I'm being honest, first of all,
mhm,
I think everyone should watch these movies anyway. This is not one that
mhm,
you're going to want to gouge your eyes out. So it's
mhm.
definitely worth watching. But
Wow, what a
um
compliment, Aisha.
yeah, I know. Well,
You're
because you
not
know
gonna
what? I don't
regret
want anyone coming back to me being like, "I can't get that time back. You owe me." No, I don't, because
Mhm.
it's not that kind of movie. You can sit there and watch it with your parents or, everyone else, and you're not going to hate it, and you will giggle at points. It's just there, as Angela mentioned, there's no heat whatsoever. So if you're
Yeah.
looking for that fire that comes
Mhm,
during Christmas, it's
mhm.
not in this movie. Just there's that. Also, Angela, they had one person in the whole fire department. One. All I'm saying is that
I
if you there are certain things that you have
know.
to take on if you
Mhm.
want it to be in your movie, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're going to have a prince, he can't be dirt poor in a crap apartment and
Mhm,
and just be
mhm,
like, this is how princes live. No, they don't. So
mhm,
put it in the budget. If you're going to
mhm.
have a fireman be
I
the
know, it's
chief or
true.
the lieutenant, there wasn't
Mhm.
a single other fireman anywhere. Remember, the alarm goes off
Yes.
and it's just
Yes!
him.
It's
It's just
just him.
it's just him. He did everything. There's always at
I
least 3,
know.
right? There's the
Mhm.
old chief, there's the
Yeah, yeah.
wisecracking, machismo fireman, and then there's the third
Mhm.
one, right? There's always at least 3. You can't
Mhm.
have one. Anyone who's out there, you
Yeah,
can't have one.
yeah.
It doesn't work. And
Mhm.
just it was driving me crazy. I'm like, so he's the beginning and the end. Okay, got it.
I didn't
Um
even notice that, but you're totally right.
I, I was like, how are you selling this? Like, give him a different job. If you only got the
I
budget
know.
for one, give him a
Mhm.
different job. Um, so yeah, I thought it just played it so safe that it
Yeah,
just
yeah,
wasn't enough, and I wanted it to be more because it's really beautiful, and no one was in particular was awful. But that happens sometimes with these stories where it's
yeah.
too close to the formula.
I think that one of the things I liked about, the conflict though between like, the old boyfriend and, the triangle is between this young woman, her boyfriend from high school who's the fireman, and then another guy who's been brought to town. He's a magazine writer to write a story about the town. And so he stays at the parents' like house to kind of, write the story. And the fireman character did have a lot of depth to him in the sense of like he was looking for someone that he could, go on adventures with and have a good time with and all of that stuff. And being home made her realize that she wanted to be in a more committed relationship and wanted to be with someone who wanted to have kids. And so I actually felt like those beats were well done, and that it was really clear that it wasn't just the trope of like, okay, the filmmakers don't want her to get with this guy, and so they're going to just make him a jerk out of nowhere, just,
Right.
so that the audience doesn't like him anymore. I actually, I liked that it was merely people wanting different things. And that's very true to life, so I really appreciated that, and it felt kind of more real in that way. I just wish there was just more chemistry, because
Right.
it
I
is a
agree with you.
movie that is like entirely dependent on chemistry. And I don't think all of these movies are actually. I think there's some movies that actually can get away with, it's not great, but like
Absolutely.
they can get away with a lack of chemistry because there's so many other elements that, like, you just see them run around and do different like fun things together, and you're kind of like, okay, I just believe you're together, whatever, whatever. But this was really about like lots of seated conversations, looks, connecting. And it was just like, this is just like not
Yeah.
yeah, not
Okay.
there.
Okay. Just me being me. Just bringing up one point. I'm not slight spoiler alert, but not really.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not gonna say it's photojournalist.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say what thing comes at the end, but how you gonna stay in someone's house
I know.
knowing what your plans are? That's all
I
I'm
know.
gonna
I
say.
know. I
How
know.
you gonna be like, stay in their home?
I know. I know. I know. Hmm. I know. You
Really?
guys will
I
watch it and you'll understand, but yeah,
and
I don't know how
I'm
he was
just
going to
gonna
do
say
that.
that.
Hmm.
How did you
Hmm.
think that was gonna work, bruh? Like,
I
how
know.
did
I
you?
know.
And
Mhm.
then and yeah, see, I'm that would be side eye forever.
Mhm.
Forever.
Yeah,
I will
I
second guess
know.
your
I
decision
was,
making
yeah. Mhm.
forever.
Yeah, yeah. It also so it's a
Just
Canadian, team. They made it, and they obviously shot it in Canada. And it is one of those, like, there's a New York street moment at the end that you're like, this is
yeah.
Canada.
Yep.
This is Canada. It's fine, but
Right.
it was just funny. I was like, oh, this is like Canada on a set. But yeah, but it's like it did get me thinking, okay, I'm like, small town black stories. I'm gonna start noodling on that for more Christmas ideas, because
Okay.
I did
Okay.
like that. I did like that a lot. I thought that was cool. Okay, so we got to rate this, girl.
We do.
Uh,
Yes, we
it's a
do.
hard
We
one.
do. We do. Uh-huh. I went first
Yeah.
last time.
I knew you were going to say that. Okay,
Yes.
so just as a reminder to people, our ratings, their chemistry, family, holiday magic, conflict, all the feels. Those are kind of the elements that we're looking at here. Uh, I'm going to give this a 7. Is
Yay.
that, yeah.
Yay.
Because I did, for me, it's like, you know, it's a lot about, did I just kind of enjoy hanging out with the family? And this is one of those movies, though, that I will put on. You put on while you're decorating a tree, while you're doing other Christmas
Mhm.
things. I
Mhm.
don't know that it's
Mhm.
like a movie where everyone needs to like sit down and really
Doesn't
like,
have to be an event. No. No, no,
yeah,
no.
it's not an event. It's just like a, oh, look at these like attractive people doing their thing. And I'm doing multiple other things, and like you can come in and out of it. So I'm gonna give it a 7. It's just the lack of chemistry was tough, but I did enjoy things about it. What are you gonna say?
I actually was going to give it a 7. That's
Oh.
it. And for me that's pretty high. And the thing is
Mm.
that it didn't necessarily do things wrong. It really didn't. There
Mhm.
were some
Mhm.
really great moments, but the best moments were not between the 3 primary people. That was my
Right.
only problem.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
is
yeah.
why I could not go
Mhm.
higher, but I think the ensemble of it all, the fact it's a beautiful it's I just like
Mhm.
it when it's pretty, right? And they
Yeah.
really tried to talk about, um, their own the town's Christmas magic and all the things that they were doing, and I actually really liked that part. I just wanted it to be I just felt like it was played too safe, and if they
Mhm.
had just upped it, it could have been great.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
7 it is, my friend.
Mhm.
Yay. All right, that's us, for now, and please, stick around for Behind the Curtain.
And now, behind the curtain, where we talk to creatives who make the holiday movies you love. Emily's newest film is Rescuing Christmas. It's on Hallmark Movies now. It stars Rachel Lee Cook from She's All That, and many other great 90s gems, and Sam Page, who's also from Mad Men as well. So thanks so much for joining us, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read a little bit of her bio. There's a lot of credits, a lot of things to say, so I've just shortened it to a few things. But an important thing to note is that Emily, you're originally from Louisiana, correct?
That's
Yes.
right. Born and
Mhm.
raised.
Yes, yes.
Definitely.
So that's unusual. We'll get into that in a minute. But so Emily has directed 10 television movies across networks like Lifetime, Hallmark, and Discovery Plus. Her 2021 film Christmas in Tune, starring Reba McEntire, was nominated for a Hollywood Critics Association Award for Best TV Movie. Emily has worked with talent including Rachel Lee Cook from She's All That, Hilary Burton from One Tree Hill, Melissa Gilbert, Faith Ford, Beverly Mitchell, Barry Bostwick, Pam Grier, Dee Wallace, on and on and on. And in addition to directing, Emily's also a writer, earning writing or co-directing or co-writing credits on a handful of television projects. And Emily has worked a lot with Elise Murray, who we're going to talk to next week. Um, and her newest film is Raising Christmas, which is on Hallmark Movies now, and it stars Rachel Lee Cook and Sam Page from Mad Men. I had to look him up because I was like, I've seen this guy, and I was like, from Mad Men. Um, and so Emily and I want to give a little intro to how Emily and I first met. I, as you guys know, directed and co-wrote a Christmas movie named New Orleans Noel that was on Lifetime, and my producer Daniel Lewis has produced many projects with Emily. So when I was sort of undertaking the very large endeavor of, co-writing, directing this film, I was kind of going into production, and Daniel was like, I think it would be really great for you to talk to Emily. She's done a bunch of these. And so Emily was kind of my clutch phone call when I was like, how do you
Everybody
do
needs
this?
that.
This is so hard. So I'm just forever grateful to Emily for being that clutch phone call many times, just kind of giving me the ins and outs of like kind of real talk about how it's possible to make these movies so quickly, because that's the thing.
hmm
It's, these movies are made extremely quickly. So, Emily, again, thanks for joining us. And I wanted to start by asking you, when did you know you wanted to be a director?
Well, I mean, I think maybe kind of always, but like not really. I was always a kid who was, putting on shows for the family and wanted to be in theater and just wanted to tell stories. But of course, I didn't really like know that I wanted to be a director specifically until a bit later. So I minored in theater and majored in film in college and was kind of still kind of trying to figure out my role, my place, like where I really felt like all of the things I would was interested in would kind of gel together. And not only what I was interested in, but just what I was good at, which was sort of like, motivating people, building teams, sort of, being a cheerleader for people. I'd done like leadership stuff my whole life, through school too. So it wasn't until I was actually like working in Los Angeles, and I had gone through a couple of jobs working for different creative executives or production executives. And again, trying to figure out like, is that my path? Do I want to be an exec? Do I want to be a producer? Like, and I
Mhm.
always knew I just came alive on set. Anytime I could get out of the office and go down to set, I just never wanted to leave.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, there's something there. So maybe not an executive, maybe a producer, or somebody whose, role is more set based. And then I started working at a commercial acting studio where we would run commercial auditions, and I was the session director, and in a day I'd see probably 80 actors, and they're all coming
Wow.
in
Mhm.
doing these
Wow.
quick commercial auditions for all the
Mhm.
big brands, and I found myself at the end of the day exhausted because I wanted to give every single one of them like the same energy from me and the same opportunity to do their best job in the room. And it wasn't just sort of like
Mhm.
stand there
Right.
and, hold the camera. It was like I really found myself like caring about again every single actor that came in. And then within that job I got to
Mhm.
sort of start running all the callbacks and hearing all the producers talk about, why one actor was going to be, chosen over the other and just kind of the ins and outs. And that job paired with my next job, which was being an onset script coordinator for an A-list director, where I was sitting at the monitor every day, all day for 40, 50 plus days on these, big rom-coms,
Mhm.
and really getting to
Wow.
see it firsthand and kind of watching, yes, watching what he was doing directorially, but also watching what he was doing sort of politically, meaning sort of just the political
Mhm.
nature of directing and being able
Yeah.
to interface and engage with every department head and all of these different pieces of talent and both be specific to each one of them and also have this sort of grand bird's eye view of things at the same time. And I was kind of like, I think like this might be the role that kind of puts together all of the things I'm good at and want to get better at. And then there was the whole
Mhm.
exciting part about just like, learning more about the camera and lenses and just all of the more technical parts of directing. But in terms of what it took,
Mhm.
just sort of in my personality just kind of slid into that really naturally. Um, and
Mm.
yeah, so I think that was kind of around, man, I can't remember, probably like 8 or 9 years ago when that shift in
Mhm.
sort of my path kind of started changing. So I know that was a
Mhm.
bit of a long-winded answer, but that's kind of the ABC of how I got there.
Yeah, no, that's I really like the way you kind of talk about directing as being sort of a team leader, because I think that's something that is really something that people don't really think about that much.
Mm.
Um, so when you said, okay, now this is what I want to do, I know my path. How did you get kind of on this path to being like queen of directing holiday movies?
Well, it was sort of by chance, honestly. I mean, not the directing part of it, but so I had produced a couple shorts and I was producing shorts, and
Mhm.
then I knew I needed to make a short to sort of as a director to make that shift. And so that was the first thing I did is I wrote and directed a short. But as you know, Angela, it's very easy for people
Mhm.
to kind of pigeonhole you based on an early piece of material or the one thing you have to show and say like, oh, that's what you do, so you can only do that. So in my mind I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if somebody's going to pigeonhole me, like I want it to be in a space that I'm like really interested in, or like it is kind of
Mhm.
a vibe that I could work in for a while. So I made a
Mhm.
short film that was like a Twilight Zone episode vibe. So very different from a holiday
Mhm.
film. But I was like, it had, it was, we shot for 5 days, and it's about a 23-minute short, but it was kind of my version of a mini Twilight Zone episode. And that actually, after the film festival circuit, that actually did get me my first paid for hire directing job, and it was for
Mhm.
Daniel Lewis. But
Mhm. Mhm.
ironically, it was a thriller. I mean, obviously the one-to-one transition, makes sense. I had done this kind of Twilight Zoney thrillery thing, and then I got hired to do a very quick one of those, lifetime. Uh, I think the original title was "Missing Daughter" turned into Nanny Seduction. But yeah, so
Mhm.
that was my first thing, and then that same producer and that those same execs the following year, the experience had gone well, the movie had done well, And so they were like, hey, we want to, we've got some Christmas movies now that we're doing. We're expanding and doing a few more Christmas movies this year. Would you want to meet on a Christmas movie? And I truly think that it was Daniel, our producer, who, really vouched for me and was like, no, we want her to do it. But also, the Christmas movie that was my
Mhm.
first one was Christmas in Mississippi. And I could really speak to growing
Mhm.
up and living in Christmas in the South and how that's different and how that had felt different as a kid and how I could kind of translate that to a holiday movie, the no snow Christmases, as they say. So that was a little bit more of like it wasn't like, oh, you did nanny seduction, so you're perfect for Christmas in Mississippi. But it was the same company, and it had the Southern element, which made it sort of like easier for it to be me and not somebody else, because I brought that level of kind of knowing and authenticity because I lived it. And then from there, yeah,
Right.
it just kind of kept every year. It was sort of like we just kept somebody kept calling, and then eventually I started co-writing them and then writing them. And so it was kind of nice because each year within the space there was like a little step forward. Like it was either like, okay, the next year I was like
Mhm.
co-writing one with the writer, and then the next year I was like writing one of my own, and then the next year I was directing two, not just one. And so it's been a
Mhm.
nice growth in the space. And the space itself has exploded over the last 5 years, which I'm sure you guys have talked about, and we will talk about. So
Right.
Mhm.
So my question, I guess, were you a fan of the Christmas movies before your first one? Like, had you been watching them up to that point, and were you like, yeah, I love Christmas movies on it, and then have to figure out what the heck they wanted from you?
Not really. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was somebody who just like had Hallmark or Lifetime on at all times. And this was probably 7 years ago now when I did my first one, but the quantity wasn't near what it is now back then. I certainly did have
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
a love for the season. I also had Christmas movies that I loved that it was a time where you would say, oh, it's time for this movie or it's time for that movie. Like there were certain movies that you wouldn't
Mhm.
watch the rest of the year, but then when that season would come on, you would get so excited to turn on
Right.
Home Alone or Christmas Vacation or these movies that you could really watch whenever you wanted, but you didn't because it came with sort of a sense of the season and a sense of like what everybody was sort of experiencing at that time. So I certainly knew, and I grew up watching like soap operas with my mom, and also like my mom was a Lifetime movie fan, a movie of the week fan. So I kind of like, even though these weren't exactly a one-to-one correlation, like I understood what being asked of me, if that makes sense. And to your question,
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of research. So like I think
Mm-hmm.
we should never stop doing research or learning and never pretend that we know everything about everything. I think that's just part of being a human being. But
Mhm.
if I
Absolutely.
know I'm going to go have a meeting for something, I'm going to study up. I'm going to go and watch
Yes.
everything in the last couple of years, or at least parts of everything that company's worked on. I'm going to go and look at which ones were successful and try to break down why they were successful, and what people were saying about them online. I think that's just part of being a smart business person as well as a filmmaker. And so when I
Right.
eventually went and took the meeting, I felt like I had done enough research, but also just understood the genre as an audience member. To your point, but yeah, I don't necessarily think I would call myself like a Christmas obsessed at the time. That I was just like, I watched everything and
Mhm.
didn't miss any of them.
Mhm. So you made a bunch of movies in Mississippi kind of back to back.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, um, what did you learn kind of going from, the first to the second? Like, after you made that first one, um, what was kind of the challenges on that first one that helped you improve?
Well, the first one was, the first one to the second one, there was a little bit of a budget
Mhm,
shift, which obviously makes things a little
mhm,
easier because we did have a couple more days.
Mhm.
To your original comment, Angela, of just, how fast these movies are made. A typical
mhm,
Christmas movie is made in about 15 days. Sometimes you get a few more days depending
mhm.
on budget or scale or where you are or circumstance or talent or whatever, but that's 15, 16 is kind of like the kind of gold standard. The first movie that I did,
Mhm.
that thriller, we shot in 12 days, so it was
Mm.
even faster. And speaking to sort
Wow.
of tools that help you make movies,
Mhm.
for both of them we only had
Yeah.
one camera, which
Mm.
is a whole different approach than if you have a second camera, because
Right. Yeah.
every scene takes twice as long, and also you're not just able to get as many setups and get as many different pieces of coverage, so you have to be just really judicious in like, how can I the most efficient way to tell the story of this scene, and that's just kind of how you have to
Right.
move through the
Mhm.
Mhm.
so I will say that because of the constraints of the first one, it was kind of like being thrown in the pool and having to learn how to swim, because it was like,
Yeah.
okay, you have to make a full movie in 12 days with one camera, and we had a
Mm.
child actor, which meant we couldn't shoot with her for as many hours. We did have twins, so that helped, but it was sort of like
Yeah.
it was actually kind of
Wow.
helpful to start really squeezed in, because it was sort of like, okay, like there's no option not to have a movie on the other end of it, right? So you
Right.
just kind
Right.
of learn really quickly how to narrow in on, like, look at a scene being like, what is the point of this scene? Like, that's the very first question.
Mhm.
It can be about all this other
Yeah.
stuff, but really you have to ask, like, what is the point? Why is it even in the movie? And how do I most efficiently get to that point? And that's kind of on these schedules how you have to move through. And then,
Mhm.
I this most recent one that I did, I think we shot it, I can't remember now, they kind of all, but I think it was 18 days,
Oh,
and with
wow.
two cameras, and
Mhm.
and uh
Mhm.
and
Oh.
it felt like, but and Angela will tell you, it felt like the most, that we still had problems, but um
Mhm.
felt luxurious compared to 12 days 7 years ago. And I look
Mhm.
at some of these movies where you hear they shoot like 45 days, 50 days, and you're just like, what is,
I
and there's
know.
a lot that goes into
You're like,
that,
"What'd you
but
do with all your time?"
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I know. I
and
am like,
That's
what do
good
they
time.
do?
and a lot of it is too, like, obviously stunt work and effects and things like that take up time,
Right.
but even in some of these
Mhm.
movies we have light stunts and we have snow effects, and what I think a lot of people don't realize too is that a Christmas movie is a period piece, and the reason I
Yep.
say that is, and again, Angela can speak to
Mhm.
all the what I'm saying, but you get these mandates that literally almost every frame of a movie, usually from Lifetime or Hallmark, they want it to have Christmas in the frame. So you're never walking into a space that you're not decorating, and you're never just going to buy any wardrobe. It's all curated around Christmas. All the color palettes, the sweaters, the styles, everything is sort of, it's a period. It's what you would do if you got a movie that was set in 1970, right? You'd have to basically kind of
Right.
put that on everything, and that's kind of what you do with these Christmas movies as
Mhm.
well. So we are doing a lot for a lot of times, and I'm always so impressed whenever I watch so many of these, just knowing what has gone into them, that I think we've gotten to a place where they're really getting elevated and special, and I love that the storylines are branching out and the topics are branching out. um, but yeah, man, from that
And
first
who
to the
gets to be
second
in the
one,
movies is branching out also.
absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
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 From the first to the second movie, I think it was just like continuing to learn how to be efficient. I think that was,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
when you are staring at a day, or when you're at lunch and you realize you're not going to get everything, how to
Right.
adapt on the fly, like that never has not come in handy, because even with the 18 days and even with it still happens,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it just does.
So how is it different for you, kind of making that transition? You know, you were saying like, okay, you started out just directing and then you were able to co-write. And what's your process that's different when you're kind of writing and directing versus just directing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll say I've kind of done all of the various like versions of it, right? Like I've directed things that
Mm-hmm.
I had really no hand in writing. I've also directed things
Mm-hmm.
that like I've kind of been co-writing with the writer to revise it as we're shooting. And then
Right.
I've done the ones where it's like a page one script from me all the way to directing. I would just say,
Mm-hmm.
for the ones that you're writing, I think that the helpful part to then going to direct them is that the execs at that point have you kind of had a little bit of a peek behind the curtain in terms of like knowing what the ask has been for that particular story, or why certain story beats are
Right.
what they are. Sometimes when you
Mm-hmm.
come to a script and you haven't been part of that process, there are certain things that you kind of question, okay, well, why is this storyline, this way, or what do you think about changing this? And sometimes it's like, yes, like we're open to changes, and sometimes it's like, oh well, that was like this, and let me catch you up to how we got here, and this has already been through these
Mhm.
network notes. So really, I would say
Right.
that just the best part about writing them is just kind of already having that, gone through that process, to where
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when you're going to shoot, yes, things are potentially still going to change. And obviously, when you get actors on board, they have ideas. And a lot of times, they'll think of something or a through line or a thing about their character that you hadn't thought before. And you're like, yeah, that's true, or that's great, or that actually isn't clear
Mm-hmm.
and we should clear that up. So that always happens in production. But I think just having the knowledge of knowing how you landed where you are when you roll camera is really beneficial, because you can already start kind of directing um, with all those conversations already kind of subconsciously in the back of your head. You're not wondering if it's like what the network was asking for, or what the actor's comfortable with,
Right.
especially when a piece of talent has already kind of been involved in the writing of it or in the development, which has also been something I've been a part of. That they've also been with it for a while, and this is something that they're comfortable with, they've kind of signed off on, so it kind of takes that element away when you're shooting, which is nice
Mm-hmm.
because everybody's kind of already like of the same mindset and on the same page.
Yeah. I mean, you've worked with, some pretty big stars. I mean, I'm thinking of Reba McEntire specifically.
Of course, of
I
course.
really, I
She's
really
she's the
enjoyed that film a
best.
lot. Yeah. So how is it different when you're working, like, how is it different working with kind of a certain type of, you're working with different kind of types of celebrities, but how does that element affect all of this? Because there's such a short schedule, but you're dealing with talent of a certain caliber, and that requires its own sort of set of time and management. So, what are your strategies as you're dealing with talent like that?
I think that one of the big things is just really trying to gain their trust early on. So,
Hmm.
for me, like I never go into shooting, and for the Reba project specifically, she was actually already on board the project before I was. So she
Hmm.
was a part of that, of kind of crafting that story, or had been approached about it. I can't really remember, but she and the producer were already attached. She was a piece of talent for Lifetime, and so that was already again helpful, because when I was coming in,
Hmm.
I just got to be really excited about the script and the story. And of course, I was over the moon to work with Reba, but it was more about how do I translate like my kind of vision and excitement and some of the sort of creative ideas I have to her and just get her as excited about it as I am, rather than try to have me worry about like talking to Reba McEntire or being in front of her. Like, I think knowing that she was already invested in doing a Christmas movie kind of took that pressure off, because she was already, in a sense, saying like, I'm game, I'm in, like, we're doing this. So when you already have that attitude, I think then it's just about sort of bridging that trust between just having whoever your talent is know, like, hey, I want you to look your best. I want you to be your best. I'm looking out for you. Like, tell me the things that, are not working for you. Tell me just let's always have this open communication. If something's not working, if something's going on set that's bugging you, that's beyond the story, like, give me a call, shoot me a text. Like, it doesn't work if we don't do that. And to her credit, like, of course, being number one on the call sheet too, and like leading a movie for anybody is taxing. And she's been doing this, so long, and is still touring and selling out, shows, and she's amazing.
Absolutely.
But she's just amazing. Making sure that she was having a good time and that she felt like she would be proud of what we were putting on the screen. Like, that was, I want that for everybody, but I think just to make her feel more like a teammate and a partner in it, rather than the piece of talent that I'm directing, like, that's sort of the difference. It's like, no, it's not like you're over there and I'm over here. It's like, we're both over here, and let's constantly be talking about like what's working and what's not. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw out a question to the both of you, as the non-industry person who is a fan. And one of the things that you both have in common is that, Angela, you had Patti LaBelle in yours, right? So you both had these like iconic figures in your movies that had love interests, right? And so what I want to know, as a fan who watches, like, how did you maneuver just even like intimacy when you have these huge people in your films? Like, for instance, did Reba know John Schneider? Reba, like, I know her like that, but anyway, did she know him? Like, how did you maneuver that? How did you both?
Yeah.
They did actually know each other.
She's the one that what? Okay.
They did actually know each other. It wasn't like she was sort of saying like, hey, I want John, but when we did find out that they had known each other and had, because John's a musician as well, and had toured in the past. And so they had this comfortability that I think really shows up on screen. I thought they had great chemistry together.
Absolutely. They really did.
They did.
And that was a long, arduous process for us on that backside of just going through name after name after name, not only looking at them as a piece of acting talent, but also they had to have some musical chops too. So making sure that felt authentic, and that wasn't going to be something that felt put on. So it was a really diamond in the rough to find somebody who felt Southern, who felt that they could pull off being a musician, because he was, and that had this sort of like charm and comfortability with kind of Reba's energy as well. Because it's fun, because they kind of can go tit for tat at times in that movie, and that's like part of the fun of it. And like, to be able to find that kind of matching energy. So again, it was just research. I just watched a bunch of stuff as names kept getting thrown at us. I would go back and like try to dig up anything I could find on any of the names that I was finding, to see if the musicality was there, even a little bit. Like, could we, what could we make of it? But yeah, we're so lucky we landed on John, because I can't really imagine it with anybody else.
Yeah, I should say, this movie we're talking about, Christmas in Tune, came out 2 years ago, was it?
2021.
I think so.
21.
Yeah. And when you said that about John, it was like of course it would be him, but I could see how it would be hard to come to it. Like I looked at him and thought, oh, those two people make sense. And you
Right.
believe that they both were famous musicians, because that's the thing. I think something just to piggyback on what you were saying, trying to find the Tim Reed character in our film, it took a minute, I mean, it's like you think, oh, Patti LaBelle, Tim Reed, two icons, makes sense. But it did take, like, we saw a lot of different people, names kept kind of being brought up, and it was trying to find someone that you believed was a love interest and sort of had the same sort of gravitas. And it's a small part, so they could, this person had to come in and kind of sweep Patty off of her feet very quickly, because it's just kind of one of the smaller storylines. And Lifetime brought up Tim and said, what about him? And they always sort of have, people that they recommend. And Patty, I think they knew each other, but kind of in the way that, like, older Black icons know each other. There was a time when there were so few of them kind of working, and so I think they all interfaced. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, she did walk into it saying she wasn't gonna kiss the person, and that was the thing that I was kind of like hard in my chest, like, I really want a kiss, right? So I was just like getting my pep talk, like, for like going like, okay, I'm gonna do my pep talk. We talk about making you feel comfortable, but she was like, oh, I said that before I knew it was Tim. I'm fine, like, all I wanted to was Tim Reed. She was like, oh yeah, that's fine.
She's like, I just had to protect myself in case.
Exactly.
No
And
shade. I
like,
would do the same thing.
yeah. I was like, okay, phew, but I have to say, Emily, though, I was very inspired by your film Christmas in Louisiana. And that was sort of why I really loved the intergenerational love stories, because there's like three different love stories. And that was kind of actually when we were pitching the Patti LaBelle character love story, we referenced that, because we were like, oh, see, like, in this film that that Daniel produced, and and that they love so much, it worked really well, and Lifetime was really into having, like, love, two love stories that were kind of from the younger leads and then the older characters as well. And I think it's nice. I think that people really love that.
They do. And when you give it's hard to, within like a 87-minute time frame, to find the right level of feeling like you've given each story enough time to be its own thing. But when you can kind of find that balance, it is really nice, because the audiences for these movies are so diverse that, and to your point, that the who's being cast in these movies is changing, and who we're focusing on is changing as well. I think that Lifetime's done a really good job, and they've always done a really good job of sort of supporting older love. Oh, I say older, but older than the 20 somethings love stories. But that's kind of now catching on and spreading wider, which is great, because the holidays are hard and messy and complicated and wonderful for everyone, and it's oftentimes people who are in their sort of second phase of life, who have lost a spouse, or who have gotten divorced by that point, that it's a whole other experience to have grown-up kids and have split families, and it's a whole other tapped into version of the holidays that's very real for a lot of people. And I'm really just happy that we're continuing to see all different versions of what that's like.
Agreed. Absolutely. So I wanted to just ask you a little bit about, you have a movie coming out this holiday season, correct?
This week, in 2 days.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the movie that you have coming out this week?
Yes, and I have a correction to make. When I said we shot it in 18 days, I was like, I don't think we did. We shot it in 16 days. I went back and pulled up the call sheet. I was like, they're gonna be like, we did not. No, we did not. But even so yeah. So it's called Rescuing Christmas. and it is
Mhm.
going to come out on Thursday, in 2 days, on the 7th, December 7th. It will air exclusively on Hallmark Movies Now, which is Hallmark's streaming site. So
Gotcha.
what's great about that is it doesn't necessarily have, it has a date that it premieres, but it doesn't have a one and done. So once it goes up on the 7th, it'll be available to stream for the holiday season. And
Okay.
yeah, it's starring Rachel Lee Cook, again, from She's All That fame, and so many
Mhm.
other things, Josie and the Pussycats, and Sam Page from many of these holiday films, also Mad Men and The Bold Type.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it is such a fun movie. It may be one of my favorites. It
Ooh.
the thing
Mm.
that I love about it is we have a North Pole element to this movie, which makes it so fun and magical and fantastical. We come into the movie and we meet these elves and Santa right away, and right away you get that this is going to be a movie that's got magic in it in some way, shape, or form. And we are our team did such a wonderful job of creating this North Pole world and these sort of magical characters that are funny and feel grounded and look amazing. And
Mhm.
we have a diverse Santa in this movie, which is also amazing. We have T. Michael Rambo, who plays
Mhm.
Santa, who's a wonderful Black actor. And just to be able to, we didn't do that to cast a Black Santa. He was just the best of the
Mhm.
bunch, and we were like, yeah, of course he's going to get the job. And it was so fun just to have that be like an added element that
That's
wasn't sort
awesome.
of like a
Mhm.
we have to do it, or like it wasn't prescribed from the jump. He just was our favorite
Mhm.
actor, and he got the
Yeah.
job because of it. And I just love that. But it just added this whole other element that we hadn't even ever, planned for or thought about. And he's just so wonderful and jolly and warm. And then Rachel and Sam are Rachel is a comedic actress, and this really lets that shine through. It's more of a comedy than a romance. It's a com-rom rather than a rom-com.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
it's just so fun. So the core story is that Rachel plays someone who is a little down on the holidays. She feels like she's sort of caught up in the expectations, and I have to do this and let me do that for this person. And she was broken
Mm.
up with a
Mhm.
year before around the holidays, so she's just not feeling it.
Mhm.
And these elves are subsequently also tasked at this around this same time. They're trying to pitch this new program to bring joy back to sort of the grumps in the world. And she randomly kind of
Mm.
gets selected and gets poked and prodded by these elves, and they finally get her to give in, and she gets three wishes. And one of the wishes, her last wish, is she wishes that Christmas would disappear, and she wakes up and it
Mhm.
has. And that's the journey that we go on.
Mm.
So what's super fun about this movie too, as we have a whole chunk of the movie in the middle where Christmas doesn't exist and isn't a thing. So to your point,
Mm.
Angela, earlier when we were talking about having to have Christmas in every frame, we don't have that in a chunk of this movie. And
Oh,
then we
right.
and then
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then we and then we get to watch her try to get this town and her family on board with this thing that she's realizing means so much to her, but of course they don't even know what it is. So they figure out their own
Mhm.
version of Christmas, which is also funny. And just it plays into kind of
Mhm.
all the funny holiday tropes of, like, hanging panty socks on your mantle, and just all the weird things we do that we kind of don't really think about. And along the way, the
Gotcha.
elves and Santa come to the town to try to right the ship. So we remove them from magical North Pole world and bring them kind of to the middle America, and kind of the fun that's had there
Mhm.
too. So yeah, it's just super fun, and it looks really beautiful. We've got these kind of big set pieces. We were able to shoot at this
Mm.
train depot that has these beautiful old antique trains for our sort of like part of our North
Aw.
Pole. And we were, we handmade the elves costumes, and it just felt really
Oh, wow.
it felt really different than some of the stuff I've gotten
Mhm.
to do in the past, because it wasn't just sort of, not that there's anything wrong with sort of the love story, but when it opened in the North Pole, when I got the script, I was like, oh, okay, I'm down to do this. Like, this is a fun new
Yeah.
challenge and something that's going to be really
Hmm.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And what advice would you give filmmakers who want to kind of get into this holiday space?
I would say, I mean, I think like my biggest thing is just that, and this has been true for me, is that work begets other work. So I think just
Hmm.
working
That makes
is
sense.
what will get you working and keep you working. And I know that's
Mm,
coming from a place of sort of like I've been very lucky to continue to be working,
hmm.
but it's more I'm more talking about the spirit behind that of sort of like not sitting back
Hmm.
and sort of like kind of waiting for something to happen or for somebody to,
Hmm.
you know, sitting here thinking like, oh, I should be doing this, and why isn't anybody coming after me? Which, trust me, we all feel that way, and
Right.
it's a human feeling.
Yeah.
But the harder part is to fight against that and to just say that, like,
Hmm.
okay, this one project that's asking to hire me, it's not the thing that I want to be doing right now, but it's work that will allow me to learn, meet people, and to be able to say, hey,
Hmm.
I just worked on this thing, which is like kind of always that like thing that just helps create um, the sauce for the next thing. I've found, every sort of project that
Hmm.
I've worked on, it's not every project is equal. Not every project I feel like exactly the same energy about. Like, not every script that I get, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. It's like that, but that's never going to be the case. That's what art is. It's
Right.
constantly
Yeah.
Mhm.
shifting and shaping, and
Hmm.
and you can get in there and maybe make it a little bit better, and then the editor's going to come and make it maybe a little bit
Hmm.
better, and then and then you go to the next, hopefully. And so I think it's just sort of
Hmm.
not trying to judge your current place or experience too hard, or judge whatever that thing is you're working on, because I would say that genuinely, probably, and Angela, you can answer this too, most of us are always wanting to do more, bigger, different. And I've
Hmm.
found that if you can kind of try to remove that a little bit and enjoy the thing that you're
Hmm.
in, because I was finding for a time that
Hmm.
my joy was being stolen a little bit by future casting, or like wanting, and I was sort of like missing sort of like
Ah, yeah, yeah.
being in the thing that I was in, and because I knew it wasn't where I
Hmm.
wanted to go. But that's
Yeah.
the whole thing, right? And so
Hmm.
I really have tried to pull back on that and just like be grateful for the work, and know that it's more about the relationships from the work than the work, and just
Yeah.
try to do my
Hmm.
best in that thing at that time, and not hold on to it too tightly. That's kind of my
Mhm.
best advice, is like, there's not like a way in per se. I mean, I'm still trying to find a way into the things I want to do next, and I'm sure, Angela, you would say the
Hmm.
same thing. But I think
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure that the only way I'm going to get there is if I just keep meeting people and keep working. And I think, and then I think
Great
that
Yeah.
advice.
things are going to align, you know, because there's
Yeah. That's
enough
great.
work for
That's
all of
really great
us.
advice. Yeah, you know what? I needed to hear that, Emily, today. So I'm glad that you said that. It's one of those days where I was like, yeah,
I know.
yes.
We might
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
cut that up into some sort of like short TikTok video for the masses.
Yeah, yeah,
Just, whatever you're doing, this is what you
yeah.
need to hear today about
It's
being
true.
in the moment and where you are and appreciative of where you are and not too focused on where you are not.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I love
yeah. I
that.
think the future casting too is an important point too, because it's really easy even when you're getting an incredible opportunity. I mean, I felt like even when I was you're making a movie and you're like, oh my god, I'm so lucky to be making a movie, because really very few people get the opportunity to direct in general, or to direct
Yes.
like a feature length anything for a network. And I mean, that's just rarefied air, and so
Well,
it's
and
really
that's what
just
I'm
kind of,
saying. Like, I
yeah.
realize that
Mhm.
too, even saying that,
Mhm.
it's, yeah. So continue.
Yeah, no, so it is that thing though, and then once you get into that system, you're like, well, I mean, I want to have the opportunity to do this and that, and but just being able to appreciate, okay, I'm in the moment, or even, like when you're on set, in the moment, directing a scene with the actors, appreciating that I am here with these actors telling this incredible story, and that's like what we're doing it for, is really key. And I think a good thing for people to remember, in whatever stage they're in, to just kind of enjoy it and just keep pushing forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to check
Absolutely.
in with my high
So I
school
just
self often and say like
right,
if
yeah.
she could
Exactly. Yeah.
Or
if
just
she could
have
see me.
right,
Yeah.
just have a
Yeah.
designated person to remind you. Like sometimes you just need that person, like remind me of who I am. You're like, okay, I'm your hype woman.
Hmm.
I'm gonna remind you that, like for Angela, I'm like, we've been talking about you directing a holiday movie since we were 10, right?
Yeah.
And you're actually
Hmm.
doing it. Like seriously,
Yeah.
this used to
I
be
know.
something that we would do when we were little. So
Hmm.
guess what we're not gonna do?
I
We're
I
not
love
know.
going to
that.
Complain. Yeah. 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 So
And
de-
it's,
then you
yeah.
can
It's.
have your people who are in the trenches, like when you and I would be able to talk to each other when you were shooting. It's
Hmm.
not necessarily complaining. It is more just sort of like,
Right.
I would say venting, but more just sort of like it's that creative frustration, right? Because it's coming from a
Hmm.
place of wanting to be good and wanting it to be good and wanting it to be better. And so when
Right.
it's like
right.
coming
Hmm.
from that place and you take yourself out of it and more focus on like, okay, let's just make this like, how do we get this just 10% better? But you need your hype
Hmm.
people, and you also need your people
Yeah.
Yeah.
who've been there, who understand, because I'm always calling people too,
Yep.
Hmm.
Angela, like I've got my
Yeah.
people that I'm calling
Hmm.
of like, I struggled with this.
Yeah.
How do I avoid this in the future? Like, let's go to lunch. I want
Hmm.
to talk about this last experience. Like, do you still find yourself falling into these traps? And it's so refreshing when your mentors say, yes, I just fell into that trap again last week directing an episode of something. And you're like,
Hmm.
okay, so like
Yeah.
it just is. But you need those people, and it's so wonderful that you guys have each other, which is so adorable.
Hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
okay, so I just want to say that we ask everybody this. So I wanted to know, do you have any favorite holiday movies that you can share with us? And I know that's tough on the spot, but
It is
what do
so
you love? What
tough.
gives you all the feels?
Well, I think that for me, like Home Alone always comes to the surface, and part of it is
You're the second
probably
person who said that.
just
Hmm.
my age and the time in which I saw it, because I feel like that always has a lot to do with how you continue to
Mhm.
experience something, is kind of when it first came across your life. But even more so, I'm a big like score person, and I love score. I love
Hmm.
composers, and that John Williams score is just like the moment I hear it, like I'm instantly like transported to that movie. I think it was the kind of the first time that you had seen, a kid lead a movie in that way. And as a younger
Hmm.
person, I
Mhm.
wanted to be an actor. So like that was kind of like really like, ooh, like look at this kid like leading this movie
Oh.
and being kind of the central
Gotcha.
figure. It also had
Hmm.
like it was funny. It
Hmm.
to me there were moments where I was like laughing out loud, and then there were these storylines like with the neighbor in the church where he's sitting there having this conversation about his daughter that he never sees, and it just
Hmm.
rode the line between big and broad, and then bringing it all back together in those certain moments of like the point of all of this in the first place, of the point of the holidays, or the point of taking a season to be grateful and reflect. And then when the mom comes home at the end and they see each other, and like it's like it
Mhm.
felt like it just had everything. And it's one that like I
Hmm.
couldn't wait to show my kids, even though I was like, oh boy, they're gonna try to booby trap the house.
Yes.
But yeah, it just, to me it's just like it's my go-to every holiday season. And also,
It's solid.
talk about music. It had amazing score, but it also had amazing
It did.
needle drop moments.
Mm-hmm.
It also had amazing, just like popular music. It's got like that whole random John Candy run in the truck, which I don't know if you knew this, but like most of that was just improvised. And
Oh
yeah,
wow.
I just
It's
love it.
John Candy though.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't imagine someone wrote that down.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you
Oh
watch,
wow.
there's a great
And
series
Macaulay.
on. Well, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say Macaulay Culkin just got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
I
I saw
saw.
And
that.
He was
yeah,
Seasonally
so
yeah,
good.
appropriate.
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of them that I love, but that's kind of
Mhm.
the one that like I'm always excited to like put on. I mean, we were decorating the house last night and we just like put it on. We just like put it on in the background
Mhm.
because it's kind of something everybody
Mhm.
can enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, great.
I
Well,
love
thank
that.
you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you
for all of your wisdom.
so much.
And so, as Emily said, Rescuing Christmas is streaming on Hallmark movies now. So check it out. And thank you so much for joining us, Emily.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me. This was so fun. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah.
Same to
Happy
you.
holidays.
So that's us for now. And we're super, super excited to do this with you because the truth is, we'd be watching and loving these movies anyway. And we're just really happy to do it with those who love them also or just want to hear us talk about them because that's fine too. So
Mhm.
till next time.
And remember to check us out on Instagram on For the Love of Tinsel, the number 4, Facebook, like and subscribe our YouTube channel, and tell friends, please. Like tell your friends,
Please.
share it with friends, like us on all the platforms, and also do reviews if you can on Apple or Spotify, anything like that. All of that brings more attention to the podcast. So we'd love to thank our amazing producer, Dwayne Prefew, and Nika Troy, our production assistant. So until next time, enjoy. See you later.
Thanks. Enjoy. Bye.
Bye.